Welcome and thank you in advance for watching this short video on the NCSL policy process. To start us off, here's a list of NCSL's 8 standing committees. The committee members are legislators appointed by their leadership and legislative staff appointed by staff directors. All but one of the committees, redistricting and elections, develop, debate, and vote on NCSL's policy directives and resolutions on state federal issues. Election policies are under the jurisdiction of the Law, Criminal Justice, and Public Safety Committee. I just mentioned policy directives and resolutions. What are they and what's the difference? While both are NCSL positions on state federal issues, I recommend you think of policy directives as NCSL statutes. These are broad statements of policy, whereas resolutions are used to bolster NCSL's lobbying position, clarify a question of ambiguity in current policy, provide guidance about the specifics of pending regulatory federal decisions, or provide guidance about strategy or tactics regarding a lobbying matter. Let me give you an example of how a resolution can bolster NCSL's lobbying position. NCSL has a policy directive on surface transportation. But let's say a bill in Congress has a new mandate that requires states to paint their DMV offices orange or be faced with losing 10% of their highway dollars. Well, NCSL has clear policy that will allow them to lobby against this. Someone might want to propose a specific resolution in opposition to this provision. Given resolutions are usually based on current actions, they need to be renewed or voted on every year, whereas policy directives need to be reviewed every 4 years. Most importantly, all policy directives and resolutions must address the federal government and not states, which is Rule 2B of NCSL's bylaws. However, there is an exception, and this is the memorial calendar. We currently have only one long-standing memorial calendar item, and that's NCSL supports National Health IT Week. Now let's chat about voting. Policy directives and resolutions first need to be passed by committee and then again at the annual business meeting, which is usually held the last day of the legislative summit. Whether voting in committee or at the annual business meeting, it requires a simple majority of the most recent quorum for an amendment to pass and 3/4 of the most recent quorum for final passage of a policy directive or resolution. Only legislator members can vote on policy directives and resolutions that put NCSL on record in a matter of public policy. And while there may be several members present from a state, each state gets one vote. And when I say state, that includes the District of Columbia and the territories. Where the committee business meetings and annual business meeting differ is on the number of states required for a quorum. NCSL requires 10 states be present for a quorum in a standing committee business meeting, but for the annual business meeting, it's 20 states, though we usually have 45 to 50 states present. The other big difference is that only appointed committee members, more specifically legislators, can vote on policies in committee meetings, whereas at the annual business meeting, all legislators can vote. But again, only one vote per state. This next slide is just a reminder to not forget about Rule 2B. And finally, I want to tell you about some important deadlines. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but want to highlight 2. September 5th, 30 days prior to the annual business meeting. For the summit, this is the last day that new resolutions, directives, and amendments can be introduced by any legislator. You don't have to be a member of a committee to introduce a policy, but you won't be able to vote on the policy in committee if you aren't a member of that committee. Appointments can be made up until the start of the individual standing committee business meeting, but not after. And while October 5th is a deadline for filing amendments, you can still bring amendments in writing to a committee's business meeting or the annual business meeting, but it has to be for one of the policy directives or resolutions scheduled for consideration at the summit. A full listing of the policy directives and resolutions for consideration at the summit will be posted on NCSL's webpage and circulated widely by October 15th. More information on NCSL's policy process and the rules of procedures can be found at www.ncsl.org. Select NCSL in DC from the navigation bar at the top, and then select Policy Directives and Resolutions. This is also where on October 15th, you will access the full list of policy directives and resolutions for consideration at the summit. Thanks for listening, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions.